Hi there, and welcome back to another episode at Station Road. Now, it's been just over actually 3 weeks since I last put up a video, and the last 3 weeks have been a little bit exceptional here in New Zealand. Not really in a good way, unfortunately, but the last 2 weeks we have been in a level 4 lockdown, compliments of the Delta variant. Now, it's slowly, I think, getting under control here, but it has meant essentially that the country has ground to a halt and we really can't go anywhere or do anything. Now, fortunately, this evening, here where I live in Christchurch, we shift to level 3, which is really actually no different from level 4, except just a few minority businesses are able to open. So it's kind of meant my attention directed towards Station Road and layout, and YouTube has really been diverted because it has meant other commitments that have needed my attention. And as the lockdown saga continues here in New Zealand, I'm really not quite sure when I'll really be able to fully get back into the layout. I'm going to be away from my layout for at least the next week, possibly 2 weeks, due to my mother who is in a retirement village, and it's quite tricky being able to visit family in person under these restrictions. So it has meant that I've sort of had to do a bit of juggling around so I can get myself into my own little bubble, as they call it here in New Zealand. So, leaving off from the last video, there was some mention I discussed about getting into the scenics on the hillside, some weathering and things like that, and that has not actually eventuated yet. Now, partly to do simply with not having the time, but it also came to my attention that I really actually needed to do some further construction work of retaining walls and tunnel entrances and so forth in the lower fiddleyard section, which is part of the scenic area of the fiddleyard. So I had actually begun working on that and actually building some further arch retaining walls in the Metcalfe gritstone texture. So initially it was a case of crafting some tunnel entrances for both ends of this fiddleyard section, but also there was the embankment that needed to be put together for the rise up to the engine shed / yard area up above. So I began mapping out the tunnel entrance at the church end of the fiddleyard, and once again using similar method, using a piece of cardboard to create a template, and then once again I used the same method that I used for the overhead bridge, and I actually designed this up on the computer and laser cut out the arch shape, and that way you'll get a beautifully accurate arch across the bridge. Now, the Metcalfe brick paper, what I actually did was scan some Metcalfe material plus also an arch structure, and then I manipulated that within Photoshop in order to create this rather extended arch. And it's not perfect, and by no means would it be probably accurate in real life, but it at least gives the representation, or gives the idea that it fits in with the general sort of structural architecture that's in the area. So moving on from the tunnel entrance, of course, was to build up this embankment or hill area. Now, I wanted it to sort of be similar to what's around behind the church. So once again, there was a bit of a low level retaining wall, and then it slowly rises up, but then it actually rises above the upper level of the baseboard and then drops back down. So I probably haven't really finalized it completely. I've been looking at it and thinking I just need to tweak it and fine tune it a little bit more, but the general shape of it is in place. And once I did that, then it was a similar method where the retaining walls were built with the little column pieces in between, and then the Metcalfe brick paper was applied and so forth. So on the other side of the cutting, where we have the upper level track directly above, that was a very similar, almost identical method to the retaining walls that were originally built for the lower level cutting on the other side of the church. And this time I used the Metcalfe gritstone viaduct kit in order to separate that out and create this quite long retaining wall. So the reason really why I sort of soldiered on with that particular area of the layout rather than get into the scenic components of the hill was so that when it came time for weathering the brickwork and stonework in the hill section, that I can also actually weather this area at the same time, so that we get a seamless flow rather than it looking like as if one bit was done differently to the other. So these are the high density foam sections, of course, that run along beside the scenic side of the fiddleyard. So I haven't actually anchored these components into place because it will be easier to weather the retaining walls prior to installing it into the layout. And this is in two sections because one part of this is actually on the extension baseboard framework. The other part of it is actually on the original baseboard. So the idea is that if I ever have to move this layout and I need to separate the sections, of course, one part will go one way, the other will go the other. So that's one section, and then of course this is the other section, and you end up with what will hopefully be reasonably a seamless embankment that runs along. And then this is of course shaped quite unusually because it comes up the side and then out over the upper level of baseboard. So those are those two components, and then of course, as per previous tunnel entrances, these are the fiddleyard portals at each end, and these are made from Metcalfe, from the Metcalfe viaduct kit as well. This one here is actually an untampered arch. If you get the drift, I haven't actually manipulated this in Photoshop in any way, so that is the arch as it is, and it actually works out quite well in terms of the angle that it goes across the track. And then I've built a extra long piece in here in order to sort of get the impression, obviously, that it carries on. And then this is the unusual portal at the other end, which kind of, in a way, it sort of straddles 3.5 tracks because there is also some point work in there. So the front face of this, as I mentioned, I've scanned and then manipulated in Photoshop. So those are those components there. And the retaining wall, and this is just one section of it, and it is pretty much made up the same way as the low level cutting in terms of its retaining wall, and I'll pop a link up in the top corner because I did do a video of that some time back, and it's basically the same method. I think I also did a post on Facebook as well. So it's just all mounted onto some 3mm MDF, and on the back you can probably just make out these little dots here, and these are the neodymium magnets which I have mounted into the MDF, and they connect up with some metal tabs, which you may have actually spotted that with some of the footage that has been shown. So that's how it all sort of works, and the idea is that I can weather all of these components and everything before it all goes back into the layout. This portal here will actually be permanently fixed in place because it can be. It's not going to interfere with the lift out section or the upper level track that hinges up. This one here will have to be removable, so this one will be one that will slide out in and out when needed. And then of course these embankment sections here, once they're all weathered up, they can be permanently fixed in as well. So that's where we're at the moment with this part of the build. Hopefully in the next video we will actually get into some weathering and get into some of the scenic and foliage materials on the hill, and also actually around these areas as well. So a couple of things before I go. I will leave you with a short wee running session just showing some trains running through this area with these retaining walls and all the tunnel portals in place. And one of the locomotives in action during this running session is a recent acquisition from the UK, which is the brand new Barkman Class 24. Now, one other thing that I really have to mention is I've just noticed the channel has gone over 5,000 subscribers, and I am absolutely stunned. It's not something that I really actually focus on, to be honest. It's not about that to me. Often I don't actually remember to say please subscribe, please like, or anything like that at the end of my videos. And yeah, it's just more about sharing ideas and inspiration, and it's just great hearing from people from all around the world what your ideas are and your suggestions. And yeah, I just find that fantastic. But in saying that, it's still brilliant to see the number of subscribers climb to that level. Interestingly, actually, even though I don't follow the statistics of this channel, I did actually go into the analytics, and it's something like 70 or 80% of all views on my channel are actually from non-subscribers. So go figure. So in saying that, we'll leave you with this running session and hopefully enjoy that, and fingers crossed, hopefully I will be back before you know it with the next installment of the hill section and extension build. So take care everyone, do look after yourselves, and I'll catch you next time. Bye for now.